After doing so, I will go ahead and introduce myself. I'll be moderating today. My name is Gabriel Oppler. I'm the International Policy and Partnerships Specialist at the Center for Large Landscape Conservation. We're an NGO based in Montana in the United States, and um, we're we bring together science, policy, and practice for advancing connectivity, conservation, and restoration all over the world. I'm also really grateful to be a partner of the Convention on Migratory Species and the UN Convention to Combat Desertification. And so CMS and UNCCD are co-hosting this webinar with us. We're also partners in publication of the Global Land Outlook Thematic Report on ecological connectivity, which was the inspiration for this webinar. You'll hear in a few minutes about the GLO, but we're also going to talk a little bit about on-the-ground case studies for conserving and restoring ecological connectivity, as well as some of the policy context that's continuing to advance work to protect connectivity and restore degraded landscapes. So, in a minute, I'll give you a little bit more of a rundown of what to expect today. But first, I would like to turn it over to the new Executive Secretary at the Convention on Migratory Species, Andrew Raine. Andrew.
Many thanks, Gabe. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. My name's Andy Raine. I think the last person to call me Andrew was my grandmother, Gabe. So I'll introduce myself as Andy. I can see it's still there on my title, so apologies for that. But colleagues, it's an absolute pleasure to give some very brief opening remarks to this webinar. Ecological connectivity is one of those topics that has excited policymakers and many other actors around the world for good reason. For good reason, because it is this, I like to think of it as a golden thread, that connects a tapestry of landscapes, of species, of those vital ecological processes that gives ecological integrity across jurisdictions. It's a golden thread that underpins all the investments that we make, not only in biodiversity conservation, but in land restoration, in climate action. It's a golden thread, therefore, that allows, and speaking from the perspective of a convention, it allows us to accelerate achievement of the objectives of the various tapestry of multilateral environmental agreements that countries have committed themselves to. But as you all know, just as well as me, we're simply not there yet. When we look around the world, we still, unfortunately, see these islands of conservation in seas of fragmented habitats. And today, only about 8.5% of the world's terrestrial surface, for example, is protected and connected. So if you think about that, it's quite alarming. We've invested trillions in biodiversity conservation, yet much of it still, to this day, sits disconnected and therefore vulnerable. This fragmentation, it has direct consequences. It threatens the survival of species that depend on migration across borders, species that we humans depend on for food security, for health, for functioning economies, for healthy environments. And it's not just about conservation. As climate change accelerates, connectivity becomes even more important. Species need the ability to adapt, to shift their ranges, to find refuge in these changing conditions. And it's also, of course, fundamental to land restoration. When we restore ecological corridors, we're not only reconnecting habitats, we're restoring soil health, water infiltration, carbon sequestration, etc., etc. So we're enabling a flow of natural processes that makes our landscapes resilient to degradation and to climate change. So all of these synergies, they're profound because they, and I like the phrasing that's been used, they restore to connect, connect to restore. The same action advances biodiversity, land restoration, and climate adaptation simultaneously. And it's this conversion which we are now encouragingly seeing a reshaping of global policy. As you will know, connectivity is now woven into the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Not just in Target 3, the famous Target 3, the 30 by 30 requirement for protected areas to be well connected, but integrated into Goal A and across Target 2 on ecosystem restoration and Target 12 on urban planning. And at our COP, the CMS COP, which was held in Campo Grande in Brazil just a few months ago, parties adopted the Pantanal Declaration, which urged prioritization of ecological connectivity for migratory species. It elevated this agenda right to the top. And that momentum, we're seeing it carrying forward at the upcoming CBD Subster in Nairobi, where I'm speaking to you from this week. We expect to see some parties calling for connectivity, ecological connectivity, to be formalized as a standalone fifth element in the current program of work on protected areas. So this is not just an idea that's bubbling in webinars. This is an idea that is really surfacing and shaping government policy, and it's clearly a priority. So from the CMS side, we're proud to be a partner in this journey. We're proud to be a partner and indeed leader in championing ecological connectivity. We're proud to be a primary intergovernmental framework for this purpose with a host of mandates to advance the agenda. What you'll hear in this webinar today is where all of that translates into action. It's a great agenda that Gabe's going to run you through on the next slide. But we have some compelling speakers that are going to share some practical examples of what connectivity looks like in practice and how to do it. So from our side, it's those examples that give life to our policy framework that we've worked so hard with member states to advance. The Samarkand Strategic Plan for Migratory Species, for example, that we adopted back in the previous COP14. This envisages by 2032, migratory species will thrive in fully restored and connected habitats. That's the vision. And in support of this vision, there's a host of initiatives. And importantly for us, let me flag and highlight to you GPEC, the Global Partnership on Ecological Connectivity. This brings together multilateral environmental agreements, important NGOs like the Center for Large Landscape Conservation, WWF, and others, working on and as a coordinated network to scale action in this space. The GLO that you're going to hear about, the Global Land Outlook Thematic Report on Ecological Connectivity and Land Restoration, this exemplifies this collaboration. It provides a technical foundation that parties need to advance and to implement these commitments. So colleagues, the vision's clear, the science is sound, the political will is building, and what we need now is an alignment across conventions, across sectors, across borders, across entities, and that's what this webinar is helping to advance. So I'm hopeful that we all leave here with a sense not just of what connectivity means, but what it takes to deliver it, what it looks like. So many, many thanks, Gabe, and good luck for the rest of the webinar.
Thank you so much, Andy. Really appreciate those words and are glad to have your leadership on the issue going forward. Today, a little bit of an agenda here so you know what's coming. First, we're going to hear about that global land outlook. And this is going to be from Mirja Stoldt, Program Officer at UNCCD, who is the lead editor on the publication and will give us a little bit of a teaser on the report and hope that you will access it after the webinar. We're then going to transition into a few case studies that are going to represent a bit of a diversity of across the connectivity world, everything from transboundary terrestrial projects to policy focus at the national level in France, um, to then the freshwater realm, and especially looking at the sorry, Rafael, I got a little distracted there. Looking at governance across a freshwater river basin. So, diversity of case studies, um, again, representing how important ecological connectivity is for bridging different ambitions in terms of climate, biodiversity, land restoration. My colleague Aaron Laur will then give us a brief overview of the policy implications across international policy fora. And as Andy alluded to before, the Global Partnership on Ecological Connectivity is one of the key institutions facilitating this collaborative approach. And Anuska, who is the coordinator for the GPEC, will give you a little bit more on the issue. And we'll finish with looking forward to the UNCCD COP in Mongolia, which is coming up. And so this will hopefully be a forward-looking end of the webinar. As I transition to the next speaker, I also want to launch a little bit of a poll here. Hopefully this works. We want to get a little bit more information from you as participants to know where you're coming from, how you learned about this webinar, what you know about connectivity, and this will help frame both our conversation today and future kinds of events. So please go ahead and do that poll. Meanwhile, I'm going to turn it over to Mirja, who will, again, tell us about the GLO. Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much, Gabe. I think we can go right into the first slide. And because we are a very diverse group today, I'm just briefly going to introduce UNCCD for those that might not be familiar with the convention. UNCCD stands for the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, and it is one of the 3 Rio conventions, specifically looking at land and promoting any practices that avoid, reduce, and reverse land degradation to achieve land degradation neutrality, which is basically a no net loss of land. Just a bit of framing for the global land outlook. Next slide, please. So the Global Land Outlook is UNCCD's flagship publication, and this is actually the first GLO that is co-branded. It's published together with CMS and developed in collaboration with CLLC. Last year at the IUCN World Conservation Congress, we had a first launch of the report, and it really puts a spotlight on the linkages between land degradation and ecological connectivity loss, and tries to frame why sustainable land management and restoration is important. And it was published with the upcoming IPBES assessment in mind, which will be published next year, sort of highlighting some of these interdependencies and the topics relevant to UNCCD in the ecological connectivity space. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of background. We have land degradation increasing everywhere in the world. Over 40% of land is degraded, which is fragmenting ecosystems, and they lose their ability to support wildlife populations and to regulate water and nutrient cycles, which of course then again has an impact on the vulnerability of the land and resilience, and thus the availability of natural resources that we depend on in the future. We really see ecological connectivity as this invisible networks that connects landscapes and organisms and supports flora and fauna, and ultimately us as human beings, our economies and our lives. And it really is the key determinant of the productivity and the resilience of land and the natural systems we depend on. And the report is trying to get a better understanding of some of these dynamics and considerations, which often go well beyond country boundaries, and can hopefully support the design of more impactful sustainable land management, restoration, and conservation initiatives. Next slide, please. we have to do the definition. So CMS has a definition of ecological connectivity, which is the unimpeded movement of species, connection of habitats without hindrance and flow of natural processes that sustain life on Earth. And in the GLO, we really consider ecological connectivity in its broadest sense. So all the biotic and abiotic structures and functions that support healthy populations and the delivery of ecosystem services. And next slide, please. Thanks. Anticipating already. And we're looking at multiple dimensions of ecological connectivity. Some of these are, I think, best or the most known. Movement of species is very common. I think that's what everybody associates with ecological connectivity. Same, the exchange of genetic material, also how landscapes support species movement under changing ecological or changing climate. Migratory connectivity, which is of course championed by CMS, but the report also looks at some of the lesser known dimensions, such as communicative transmission, so how organisms share information, the flows of solar energy, wind and water, a lot of which also explains the processes that are going on in soils, which are of course an important part of degradation, but also socio and socio-ecological connectivity. So what connects us as human beings, how we use natural resources, and how we communicate and collaborate. And all of this, of course, is underpinned by structural aspects and then functional aspects, so the flows of organisms and natural processes. Next slide, please. And as part of the report, we are looking at the different drivers of fragmentation and degradation, how these influence these multiple dimensions and ultimately lead to a loss in ecological connectivity. And this would take very long to present, but I think what's something that you can see from sort of the main drivers we have here is that a lot of these, such as agriculture and forestry, urbanization, infrastructure, and conflict, are drivers that create a lot of land use change and that completely transform ecosystems from its natural state. And this is then often either leads to or is exacerbated by climate change, invasive species, and pollution, and creates the fragmentation that disrupts ecological connectivity. I think from this overview of the drivers, we can see how closely sort of healthy land and ecological connectivity are connected and interdependent. Next slide, please. And that is really one of the core messages the report is trying to convey with this very catchy phrase that CMS actually came up with: connect to restore and restore to connect, which is supposed to be a paradigm shift in how we manage land, water, and biodiversity resources. Because ecological connectivity is relevant to restoration initiatives, because we don't just want to restore the structures, we want to make sure we've got functional and healthy ecosystems. And on the other hand, of course, restoration is key to enhancing ecological connectivity with the declining refugees and protected areas we are maintaining. Next slide, please. I'm going through these quite quickly. There's a lot more information in the report, but it will be very dense for this meeting today. And I think one of the key messages that the report is trying to make is that we need to start considering areas outside of protected areas. Protected areas and corridors are very important refuges, which are also required to promote restoration and to restore areas. But we need to start considering ecological connectivity and other land uses to effectively hold further degradation and fragmentation. And the report really tries to show some avenues on how this can be done, and some technical solutions that already exist, and examples of, for example, from the agricultural sector, promoting regenerative agriculture, forestry, agroforestry, for example, water management, so the restoration of watersheds, but also using wetlands for water purification, the conservation space, of course, protected areas, corridors, and so on. Green cities, so what can we do in terms of green spaces, in terms of green buildings, but also responsible industry, and making sure that mining sites, for example, landfills, are rehabilitated to contribute to or to reduce fragmentation and use these landscapes effectively. And many of these different technical solutions that are outlined can be combined. They can be used at different levels and scales and adapted to the local context, and should ultimately integrate both supply and demand side dynamics and contribute to a bigger picture of restoring entire landscapes or restoring ecological connectivity in entire landscapes. Next slide, please. And of course, a lot of these technical solutions cannot be implemented in isolation, so they require an enabling environment. And the four main domains we looked at here is inclusive and participatory governance frameworks, so really making sure that local priorities are reflected in policies, that we have robust integrated land use planning that considers all sectors, that we work together at the regional level, and that we create synergies amongst the different environmental targets we have at the global level. Another key pillar is integrating local communities and traditional knowledge. They are ultimately the stewards of land and natural resources. Their rights need to be considered, their knowledge needs to be considered, they need to be involved in decision making, and they need to benefit from the conservation that they ultimately do. I think my finance is very clear. We need financial resources to do this, and we need these resources to reach the local level. And then, of course, research and monitoring so we can make informed decisions. And this really is twofold. On the one hand side, looking at how can we promote this kind of conservation of ecological connectivity in other land uses, because it's very well established for protected areas and corridors, and the impact is very clear. There's a lot of guidelines on how to do this. It's a lot less clear as soon as you start looking at some of the other land uses, such as agriculture. And there's also considerably less research often on some of the other dimensions of ecological connectivity that lie outside hydrological connectivity, legal species movement. Last slide. I think I already presented a lot of this, so I'll keep it very short. To effectively hold degradation and fragmentation, we need to go beyond protected areas and look at entire landscapes and how we can enhance ecological connectivity. And to do this, we need to integrate the consideration of ecological connectivity into other land uses, into planning. And I think Andy already mentioned it at the beginning, this golden thread, ecological connectivity, can really bring together and solve so many of the multilateral environmental issues and goals we are trying to achieve, and contribute to sort of restoration, biodiversity conservation, addressing climate change, and pollution issues. And with that, over to you, Dave. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks so much, Mirja. Really tall task to distill this report into just a few minutes. So thanks so much for giving us that introduction. I did put a full link in the chat. And for those of you tech inclined, you can also use this QR code to get to the report. There's some really excellent figures in the report as well, some great schematics that represent the interconnected biotic, abiotic, human and ecological aspects of connectivity. So really encourage you to check out the full GLO. And again, another note of gratitude for all of the authors and reviewers who made the resource available and possible over the course of several years of work. So thanks again, Mirja. We're gonna skip this for a time, but we are gonna now transition to a few case studies. The goal here is to make some of these concepts more tangible, a little bit more digestible for on-the-ground context. First, we're going to hear from Dr. Rafael Antello, the Wildlife Connect lead for WWF Bolivia, who will take us to South America to talk about Jaguar connectivity. Rafael, do you want to still share your screen? I can stop here and turn it over to you.
Hi, Gabe. Hi, colleagues. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yes, please, if I can share, I will appreciate. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Let me share, and please let me know if you can see it in full presentation mode.
No, we see your mode or the thumbnails.
Oh, come on. Well, maybe you can share then, Gabe. Sorry.
Okay, I'll just anticipate your slide shifts.
Thank you.
All
Here
good?
we are.
Go ahead.
All good. Well, as I said, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rafael Antelo. I'm the Wildlife Connect lead at WWF. Wildlife Connect is a joint initiative between WWF, the Center for Large Landscape Conservation, the IUCN Connectivity Conservation Specialist Group, and the CMS. We work globally to strengthen ecological connectivity. Next one, please. But we land on several demonstration landscapes in different continents, in Borneo with orangutans and elephants, Central India with tigers, the Carpathians with wolves, lynx, and bears. In Unganisa with 7 species. We recently launched with the CLLC the Atlas or SOCNOT connectivity, southern Kenya, northern Tanzania. And in South America, where I'm based, in Santa Cruz, in Bolivia, we work in the Ecuadorian Amazon, implementing connectivity through a GEF project. And where I dedicated much of my time in the Pantanal and Chaco landscape, focus on jaguar connectivity, because it's a species that we have enough information for modeling corridors. It's a flagship species, it's a keystone species. So that was the reason we choose it. Next one, please. So the first we did several years ago, 4 years now, is to put together a group of experts on jaguars and connectivity from the 4 PACHA countries. PACHA is an acronym for Pantanal and Chaco. And that's served by Bolivia, Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil. The idea was to develop a map representing the vision of ecological connectivity in PACHA. Next one, please. So I'm not going to go into details on how do we get to this map to the left, but this is the ecological network of the jaguar. It took us 2 years to identify it. And you can see the gray areas are the core areas for the jaguars, mainly protected areas and indigenous territories. And the color polygons are the corridors that connect them. We also did our prioritization to identify which were the most of this 1 million square kilometers area, which were the more priority areas for the intervention. And these areas are in circles in the map to the left of your screen. Is the areas that the WWF offices have more interest or more knowledge, or there's a greatest opportunity to work in. So the 2 green circles are the areas where we are working in Brazil. The 2 red circles is in Bolivia. The blue one is in Paraguay over the Paraguay River. And the purple one is in Argentina. Next one, please. So we're very lucky that at the time that we finish, or a little bit earlier that we finish this analysis, we get some funding to implement a project called Saving the Heart of South America. So we were able to move from the theory, because that exercise is a theoretical exercise, to action in the field. So the first thing we do is to validate the corridors. So in the case of Brazil, you don't need to put camera traps because it's a very special place where you actually can see the jaguars, probably one of the few places in all the jaguars range. So we validate the corridors, and there's a lot of tourism around jaguar observation. The last estimations is about $30 million around jaguar tourism, but not all the cattle ranches benefit from that income. And there's a lot of conflict too between jaguars and ranchers. So we are implementing, or the team in Brazil is implementing, coexistence measures in the corridors to secure functional connectivity, because you can have the best the best landscape, the best forest, and all the praise and everything. But if the ranchers are shooting the jaguars, that's something that happened to us in Bolivia. You could have a structural connectivity, but not functional connectivity. So that's one of the things that's working very well. It's very cheap. It reduced the conflict almost to zero if it is well implemented, just using electric fences. And the other thing the team is working on is the fire management. Maybe you have heard in the recent years, we have had the worst fires in history in the Pantanal. So there are some techniques that can be applied. So once the fires come, they are not so devastating. Next one, please. In Bolivia, we set up camera traps to look for the jaguars in the corridor. We validate the corridor. We found them. This is a corridor. This photograph is close to a very protected area. And we did two different strategies, one with indigenous women, the one in the left, to develop non-timber forest products so they can get an economical benefit from the forest that is important for jaguar conservation. We are producing carob flour mainly, and we have jumped from 200 kilograms to 3 tons, from benefiting 16 women to 65 women, and from one community to 9 communities. So that's been a good achievement. And in the case of the cattle ranchers, we are also implementing jaguar coexistence measures, because in this case the cattle lives in the forest. They don't eat. It's a very special thing. They don't eat grass. They eat mainly leaves. So that maintain the forest, but also put in contact jaguars and pumas with the cattle ranching. So with the cattle, sorry. So that increased the level of conflict. So we are also implementing electric fences in this place. It's working very well. Now more ranchers have approached to us to also be part of this initiative. And also, next one, please. Thank you. We promote the creation of a new protected area. This yellow one is called Monte Carmelo, because it connects 12 million of protected areas and indigenous territories that go from Brazil to Paraguay through Bolivia. So we had a gap here in the middle of these protected areas. Now it's a new one. So far, it's a paper park. Now we have some resources to start the implementation, the management plan, and provide some rangers and create a real protected area. So very, very happy about this outcome. Next one, please. Also, colleagues in Paraguay, they are following a similar strategy to Bolivia, working with indigenous women, in this case with handicrafts from the forests that are important for jaguar connectivity, and with local communities with non-timber forest products, in this case, honey. That is also working good. They can sell all the honey they produce. And of course, the first thing they do, is to validate the corridor. So they also found the jaguars in this corridor along the Paraguay River. Next one, please. In Argentina, we have a totally different situation from Brazil. In Brazil, we have full of jaguars, a lot of density. In Argentina, very few. There are less than 200 in all the Chaco region in Bolivia, in Argentina, but they are coming back. They are working with the cattle ranchers, preventing the conflict, because they have noticed that more and more jaguars are coming. More and more is like 9 jaguars. No, it's not big numbers, but it's increasing, and all of them are male. So we don't know what's going on with the females. We still don't know where these jaguars are coming from. If they are coming from Paraguay, if they are coming from the western side of Argentina in the Andes region. This is something we need to find out. So the colleagues there, they are working for law enforcement. There's a forest law in Argentina that protects jaguar corridors, but it's not in place. So they are working with communities and subnational governments to implement it. And also with non-timber forest products, in this case, again, with the honey. Next one, please. Thank you. So what's next? So we have a grant from the GEF to develop a tool that is going to monitor how these corridors are going to change over the year. The process I showed you at the very beginning took us 2 years, and we know that this corridor is not going to be up to date for a long time, because we have a lot of deforestation, we have a lot of fires in the region. So we want to know year after year how these corridors are going to change. We're going to do this with an NGO based in the United States called TerraDapt. We also, in the last CMS COP in Brazil, in Campo Grande, we put together the three governments. Argentina was not on board at that time. Bolivia, Paraguay, and Brazil. We did a side event, and in the side event, the governments agree to promote a technical roundtable to increase Jaguar connectivity, but transform RUAR in this case. So we're moving from an NGO project so far. Now we are involving the governments. So it's going to be like more official. And we have received good news. We have more funds to implement the second phase of Saving the Heart of South America, so we can continue implementing actions in the field to strengthen Jaguar connectivity. Next one, please. So I think that's all from my side. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rafael. Really cool to see a suite of different management tools being used across the corridors to sort of tackle each of the challenges and the threats as they come. I think pretty main takeaway across all of the GLO and a lot of this work is that there is no one silver bullet for conserving, restoring connectivity, but really often it's the combination of different approaches. So, especially in a transboundary landscape like this, it takes a big effort. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for the invitation.
Of course, we're gonna also, as a reminder, hopefully have time to take a few questions after these case studies. So as a reminder to everyone, if you have a question for our panelists, feel free to use that Q&A feature. And next up, we're going to turn across the Atlantic to France, and we're going to hear from Fabien Paquier. Here we go.
Yes.
Here we go. Yep. To talk about how French law and policy underpins sort of a whole of society approach for green and blue infrastructure. Fabien.
Thank you very much. I'm Fabien Paquier, project manager for green and blue infrastructure at the French Agency for Biodiversity, a governmental organization. I'd like to show you how the French green and blue infrastructure policy translates legislation into concrete actions on the ground to preserve and restore ecological connectivity. Next slide, please. There is a problem on my slide. France already had protected areas and species protection policies, but as you know, protecting individual sites is not enough. Many habitats remain isolated because landscapes are increasingly fragmented by roads, urbanization, and intensive agriculture, and it's important to maintain or restore the capacity of species to move from an habitat patch to another, as we see on the drawing, not on the black background writing, sorry, but and those habitat patches has to be connected by corridors to maintain or restore the functionality of ecosystems. The green and blue infrastructure was therefore created to complement protected areas by preserving and restoring ecological continuities that allow species to move between biodiversity reservoir or habitat patches. Next slide, please. Since what we call the Grenelle law in 2010, green and blue infrastructure has become a public policy embedded in both. And that is the main strength of this policy. It's embedded in both environmental law and spatial planning legislation. It brings the particularity is that it brings together different sectors and stakeholders, including public authorities, planners, and ecologists around the common objectives, integrating ecological connectivity into spatial planning and land management at a territorial approach. So next slide, please. The policy is implemented through multi-level governance from the European level with a green infrastructure strategy to the local level, going through the national level. France defines strategic objectives, for example, through a national regulation and the national biodiversity strategy. And these objectives are then translated in regional and local planning, and for example, in local urban planning documents, strategic documents. This legal frameworks supports concrete actions on the ground, as we will see later in a later slide. Next slide, please. The green and blue infrastructure also recognizes that ecological connectivity differs depending on ecosystems, as is illustrated by the list of the sub-networks shown on the left. Sorry for the black background writing, but that was an important point that I wanted to focus on, is that more recently we have also developed the concept of tram noir in addition to tram verte bleu, green and blue infrastructure. And tram noir, we translated that by a dark infrastructure. Yes, sorry. The dark infrastructure is the aim is to preserve nocturnal ecological continuity by reducing light pollution. And for the past 10 years, OFB, my agency, has been working on these issues, and we produced a technical handbook. And the summary is available in English. I will put the link in the chat too. Okay, thank you. Next slide. This slide is to show you some implementation in the field. This policy leads to very concrete projects. Green and blue infrastructure is not only a conservation policy, it's also a planning policy that involves many sectors, including transport, agriculture, water management, and urban planning. As we show on the left, rivers barriers can be removed to restore aquatic connectivity. Infrastructure managers build wildlife crossing under roads or over motorways. Managers of natural spaces are also involved. For example, on the right, Raine Regional Nature Parks restores hedgerows, ponds, and isolated trees to reconnect agricultural landscapes. These examples illustrate how a national policy is translated into practical actions carried out by many stakeholders on the ground. Next slide. And the role of my organization, OFB, is to support, in particular, to support the implementation through the Green and Blue Infrastructure Resource Center that I'm responsible of. Rather than implementing projects directly everywhere, we provide technical guidance, scientific and technical resources, training, networking, and knowledge sharing. Our objective is to help practitioners to implement ecological connectivity more effectively across France. And to conclude, in France, legislation alone is not enough. What makes the difference, I think, is the combination of a strong environmental legal framework, its integration into spatial planning, technical guidance, and local implementation by a wide range of stakeholders. This is how French law and policy are translated into tangible outcomes. And thank you very much for your attention.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Fabienne. Really great
Quite quick.
No, of course. Only a few minutes to talk about a huge initiative, and appreciate you distilling that for us and from the leadership from the French Biodiversity Agency. We have a few great questions coming in, especially from different parts of the world, maybe who could take some inspiration or or ideas from how the French program has come to be and is being implemented. So hopefully you'll be able to take a look at those, and we can talk about that. But first, I do want to provide our final short case study, now kind of returning to the transboundary approach and now a watershed. And to do so, we have Mwasiti Ally Rashid, who's the program manager for Zambezi Strategic Planning at the Zambezi Watercourse Commission, or ZAMCOM. Mwasiti, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving ZAMCOM this opportunity to share the freshwater connectivity in the Zambezi Basin experience from ZAMCOM. So next slide, please. So the Zambezi Watercourse Commission, ZAMCOM, is formed by the 8 riparian states of the Zambezi Watercourse, including Angola, Zambia, Malawi, Tanzania, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Namibia. It is the 4th largest river basin in Africa, with an area of approximately 1.37 million kilometers square. So at the Zambezi Watercourse, the freshwater connectivity is achieved by managing not only the river channels, but also managing associated or related natural resources, including forest, wildlife, wetlands, and livelihood. So we are managing it in a landscape approach from the source of the Zambezi River to the mouth in Mozambique. And we are doing that through so many projects and programs, but today I will highlight 3 programs: the Program for Integrated Development and Adaptation to Climate Change in the Zambezi Basin, the Zambezi Basin Nature, People, and Climate Investment Plan, and the GF financed project on climate resilience and ecosystem health. So from the map, you can see that we are managing in landscape approach from the source to the mouth. We are not only managing the river channels, the Zambezi and its tributaries, but also we are managing the transfrontier conservation areas in the Zambezi Basin. For example, the Kavango Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area. We are managing wetlands and the lakes and reservoirs. Next slide, please. So why freshwater connectivity is important to us? Because it gives us opportunity or benefits, including the water supply for domestic and industrial use, irrigation, hydropower generation, and the biodiversity. But the freshwater connectivity in the Zambezi Basin, to be honest, is threatened by now. And some of the critical challenges include land degradation. About 65% of the land in the Zambezi Basin is degraded, meaning it leaves us with only 35%, which is not degraded. We have the problem of deforestation, wetland loss, and the climate-induced floods and droughts challenges. That the photo you can see at the up, those ones are hippos hiding in the mud in a river channel. That river is called the Chobe River. It is a river which is forming a boundary between Namibia and Botswana. That photo was taken in July 2024 during the dry season. And that little water you are seeing in the river is not from the river channel itself. It is pumped from a borehole nearby there. So you can see that the problems of drought in the Zambezi, upper countries of the Zambezi Basin is really facing droughts, and the problem is really. The lower photo is floods happened in Tete province in Mozambique. That was 15th of January this year, 2026. So Mozambique is facing persistent floods almost during a rain season of every year. Next slide, please. So the ZAMCOM agreement directed us to prepare the strategic plan for the Zambezi Watercourse, which is a strategic or guiding framework or tool for restoring ecological and freshwater connectivity through 4 pillars. Based on the challenges, we have pillar 1, which is infrastructure investment, meaning investing in hydropower generation, irrigation, water supply and the floods and drought management. But also, pillar 2 is the livelihood support. In the Zambezi Basin, over 44%, more than 44% of the communities are living under the poverty line. So that's why we have this pillar to support the communities to reduce poverty in the basin. Pillar 3 is environmental resources protection. As I said before, only 35% of our environment is not degraded. So we are focusing on this pillar when we are preparing projects and programs to address the challenge of environmental degradation. Pillar number 4 is water resources management, to ensure that our waters from the headwater to the mouth in Mozambique are managed sustainably. So at ZAMCOM, we promote integrated water resources management. All programs and projects that we are preparing and implementing are integrating water, land, ecosystem, and the livelihood support together, not in a segmented approach. Next slide, please. Yes, so the first program that we prepared at ZAMCOM is called the Program for Integrated Development and Adaptation to Climate Change in the Zambezi Basin. It is financed by AFDB, the African Development Bank, but the preparation and implementation, we are implementing together with partners, including UNCCD, CRIDIF, and the Commonwealth Secretariat. We have many partners and many actors, but these are the most common strategic partners that we have at the Zambezi Watercourse Commission. So PDAC Zambezi is addressing focusing on integrated approach to address the challenges that I explained before. It is supporting climate resilience building, ecosystem restoration, livelihood diversification, and climate smart agriculture, as well as value chain addition. That photo you are seeing on the right side was taken in Mozambique. That is PDAC Zambezi trying to support the communities on climate smart agriculture, but also the project supports floods and drought management system through a strengthening early warning system by installing hydromet stations at the strategic areas within the Zambezi watercourse. But also PDAC Zambezi is supporting small-scale community-level climate resilient infrastructure development at national and regional level. Next slide, please. The program number 2 that ZAMCOM is implementing is called the Zambezi Region Nature, People, and the Climate Investment Plan. We received the funds from the Climate Investment Fund through the African Development Bank to prepare this program together with the countries and other strategic actors or partners in the basin. This program promotes nature-based solutions to enhance climate resilience of communities and ecosystem in the Zambezi Basin, but also to enhance adaptation to climate change. It is being implemented in the 8 hotspots, 13 sub-hotspots, as you can see from the map. All the hotspots are transboundary, covering more than 1 country, and they cover all 8 Zambezi watercourse riparian states. So some of the investment or interventions that the Zambezi region NPCIP is focusing on includes protecting forests in the transfrontier conservation areas, protecting and restoring wetlands and degraded ecosystems, as well as watershed management in a landscape approach. From the source, as you can see, the hotspots are covering the large part of the basin, from the source to the mouth of the river. So phase 1 will be implemented for 5 years, and so far we are earmarked about $703 million from the Climate Investment Funds, the African Development Bank, and the World Bank. Next slide, please. So far we are implementing, as I said, PDAC Zambezi Zone 1, and we are implementing it only in Mozambique, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. But we are mobilizing funds with partners to implement PDAC Zambezi Zone 2. And so far, the Global Environmental Facility approved about $10.6 million as a supplementary financing for implementation of PDAC Zambezi. And this PDAC Zambezi Zone 2 will be implemented in all 8 countries, not only 3 countries as the PDAC Zambezi Zone 1. So the project will be focusing on strengthening basin government by integrating water, energy, food and ecosystem nexus, not as an isolation, but more in an integrated approach. So the key interventions for these projects include basin-wide ecological monitoring, environmental health monitoring, improve decision support system again to supplement the activities that are already being carried out under the PDAC Zambezi Zone 1. Next slide, please. So the key message here is that at ZAMCOM, in the Zambezi watercourse, we are restoring landscapes in an integrated way, not in an isolation. We are managing water, land, forest, wetlands, and biodiversity together, as well as supporting the communities through alternative livelihood activities which are environmental friendly, and not only managing the Zambezi River alone. So we are doing this through implementation of PDAC Zambezi, NPCIP, and the GF for finance the project. So together with the riparian states, we are building a connected river system that supports equitable, sustainable water use for current and the future generations. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Mwasiti. Let's see. Here we go. Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time to share with us this important transboundary governance model. This was not necessarily planned, but I do feel like a common theme across all of our case studies have a collaborative governance approach, especially including government and non-governmental entities, communities, NGOs, and other partners. So if I'm going to say preliminarily, one takeaway from the webinar, it is that partnership model. Let's see. We've got a few minutes behind, which tends to be the case in these webinars. I do want to say, first of all, for those of you putting questions in the chat or comments, really appreciate them. I realize that the other panelists can't respond, only I can. So we appreciate your questions, and unfortunately, only in the Q&A can they respond. Let's see. I do want to take a few minutes before we pivot to, let's see, bring up the opportunity for a question. I saw a really great one here from Mami. I think I'll read this one aloud. What are the real-world bottlenecks that prevent connectivity principles from being integrated into territorial policies and projects, especially where data and institutional capacity are limited? That's probably a really challenging one, but for either of our panelists, any thoughts on any of the main challenges in updating policies, and especially where data and the scientific capacity may be limited? And if not, we can always come back to you with any ideas later on.
Mirja, would you like to go?
Yes, unless you've got something. It's just.
I was just going to say the challenge often is the necessity to work across so many different sectors with so many different people. And that also then necessitates having lots of different data. And we end up with a diversity of really high quality data, or also just data that we would like to use, but then also people have that data generated from their own research, or it's governmental data, and then you have to be able to also have the capacities to bring those things together.
Thanks, Aaron. 100%. Let's see, I'll choose one more here. So another one in India, Most of the corridors are dedicated to tigers and elephants or other iconic umbrella species. Less focus is on less iconic species or biodiversity as a whole, such as movement or dispersal. The recognition of functional connectivity is lacking. What should be the policy level approach to address this issue? Well, I'll actually take that one and give a nod to CMS. As Mirja pointed out before, the definition of ecological connectivity that was adopted in 2020 with CMS resolution and updated last year includes the free movement of species and ecological processes and all kinds of ecological flows. And I think having such a definition in international policy now allows the most diverse and wide-ranging, I should say, like all-encompassing policy interventions at national levels to support connectivity. I think that's one thing that Aaron's going to talk about in his next presentation is that progression from international agreements to national level implementation. So that actually might be a good segue. And I'll just say that the Q&A is going to stay open and we'll do our best to provide more insights. But of course, there's lots of other resources that we can provide for a follow-up. So yeah, without further ado, let's welcome Aaron Laur, Manager of the International Connectivity Program at the Center for Large Landscape Conservation, who will again talk about alignment across some of these conventions and other international fora. Aaron?
Thanks, Gabe. Greetings, everyone. Many thanks for your time and joining us today on the webinar. So in this short presentation, I'm going to focus on how ecological connectivity conservation is an innovative approach that can more efficiently and effectively support implementation of national commitments across the diversity of international conservation processes. So next slide, please, Gabe. So as you've heard, the thematic report shines a spotlight on the advantages and good practices of how sustainable land management and ecological connectivity can support each other to reinforce healthier, more resilient ecosystems. This is emphasized in the report by the concept connect to restore, restore to connect. And this alignment is actively demonstrated by UNCCD, CBD, CMS, and now also IPBES, as ecological connectivity continues to be increasingly incorporated into their policies and activities. So here on this slide are some main examples from each. In 2022, UNCCD adopted the Land, Life, and Legacy Declaration that encourages parties to take into account the connectivity of ecosystems to accelerate commitments to achieve land degradation neutrality by 2030. CBD in December 2022 adopted the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, including Target 2, to ensure that by 2030, at least 30% of areas of degraded terrestrial, inland water, and coastal and marine ecosystems are under effective restoration. And this includes in order to enhance connectivity. Then recently, in March of this year, CMS COP15 adopted a revised resolution on ecological connectivity that reiterates the awareness of the importance of integrating approaches to ecological connectivity and national and transboundary environmental and spatial planning, including under the auspices of other multilateral environmental agreements, and actually calls on other agreements to collectively and synergistically support its implementation. So now looking towards 2027, the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services is planning to complete and release its methodological assessment of integrated biodiversity, inclusive spatial planning, and ecological connectivity. So this will be a great resource for all countries. So bearing all this progress in mind, I'm now going to present present how one or more of these commitments and activities is supporting efforts for implementation at national levels. So next slide, Gabe. Excuse me. So each of these following examples follows this structure. First, the related synergistic policy processes, then how a country has addressed connectivity in its national biodiversity and strategic action plan, specifically towards fulfilling the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, but also while contributing to meeting other international commitments such as UNCCD and CMS. Then I'll show how the objectives of those plans are reflected in national policy legislation and oftentimes regulation. And lastly, there's a case of project implementation. So next slide, Gabe. So in this example of Tanzania, towards synergizing across policies and processes, the country's NBSAP includes objectives towards meeting KMGBF Target 2, including reconnecting protected areas and securing aquatic connectivity. Then in its national 2022 to 26 Wildlife Corridors Assessment, Prioritization, and Action Plan, habitat restoration and stewardship is one of the 7 priorities that's included in the commitments. And it's to maintain and restore ecosystem functions by restoring stream and riparian habitat, establishing stewardship buffer zones along streams and rivers, and restoring degraded areas of priority corridors. And so one implementing project that's working towards these objectives is the new Transboundary Corridor Atlas for the Southern Kenya, Northern Tanzania landscape. It's intended to support conservation efforts for the region's important ecosystems and wildlife. It assesses 24 wildlife corridors along the border and compiles baseline data to help track habitat connectivity over time, while also identifying governance needs to support future conservation action. Next slide, Gabe. In this example from Spain, there's an emphasis on uptake, integration, and implementation that spans policies and processes. So Spain has a well-defined regulatory framework underpinning connectivity conservation. This is reflected in its NBSAP, which actually aims to strengthen the adaptive capacity of green infrastructure and ecological connectivity. It's a fundamental pillar of its national strategy for green infrastructure, connectivity, and restoration, as well as the country's strategy for permeability and defragmentation of transport infrastructure. So towards implementation, the Spain Connectivity Dialogue that was held in 2025 was organized to support more coordinated and strategic efforts around these strategies to actually determine where and what actions could have the greatest impact in achieving multiple connectivity objectives. And next slide, Gabe. Excuse me. And lastly, in the central India landscape, towards synergizing across policies and processes, India's NBSAP for Target 2 is focused to undertake restoration to enhance ecological connectivity and restore ecosystem functions and services. So this is aligned with India's current National Wildlife Action Plan that calls for maintaining and restoring landscape connectivity, especially for wide-ranging species like tigers and elephants. And the landscape spans an area of approximately 152,000 square kilometers. And the implementing project and the partners that have been working on this have actually built a repository of corridor profiles to reach national to local stakeholders and to help increase understanding of the diversity of conservation and restoration actions that can actually be taken in those corridors. So last slide, Gabe. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Back to you, Gabe.
Thanks, Aaron. Really great and clear demonstration of the connection, I think, between what may seem to some as high-level words on paper to then changes that happen within some of your countries and governments, and then also projects that make real difference in the local ecology. So thanks so much for laying that out for us. Next up, we're now actually going to talk about, as I referred to at the very beginning of the webinar, a new mechanism which hopes to bring together more of that collaborative energy, cross-government, NGO, academia, private sector to elevate ecological connectivity more widely. So to do so, I'm going to welcome Dr. Anuska Kinahan, the coordinator for the Global Partnership on Ecological Connectivity, to give us a taste of GPEC. Anuska, please.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Gabe. I think you can just go straight to the next slide. Perfect. So, I mean, we all know, and we're very familiar with the fact that nature thrives when it's connected. And we've also heard from other presenters and what we know that so do we. We also thrive when nature is connected. So ecological connectivity, therefore, must be seen as a shared responsibility for our shared future. Now, we have heard some great presentations there of all the work that's going on across the world on the different ecological realms, the importance to biodiversity, resilience, well-being. But while ecological connectivity is gaining momentum worldwide, a lot of our efforts are still relatively fragmented. And we've only heard snippets of the great work that's going on at the moment. So it's happening in all geographic regions, across all realms. And given its importance, you know, it's not just nature and people that need connected land and seascapes. We need connected action so that we can transform these isolated initiatives into a coordinated global effort, which will have a much greater reach and impact. So recognizing this, the Convention of Migratory Species, alongside other leading organizations that are working on connectivity across the globe, launched the Global Partnership on Ecological Connectivity in 2024 at the CMS COP14. Next slide, please. So currently, this partnership comprises 18 collaborative partners, which are a diverse range of partners from MEAs to other international intergovernmental agencies, NGOs, development banks, regional initiatives and organizations. And part of these collaborative partners, or a number of these collaborative partners, which form the steering committee, and these are the founding organizations which launched this partnership. And the steering committee provides strategic direction and oversight. Collaborative partners contribute to the collective priorities of GPEG through their existing mandates or work on what they're already doing on connectivity.
Anuska, I think your connection may be a little slow. Maybe if you turn off your camera, that could help.
Gabriel, it seems that she's frozen.
Yep, I was going to give it a minute there. Aaron, you know quite a lot about GPEC. Do you want to say anything else about GPEC while Anuska rejoins?
Yeah, so let me make the screen. Sorry about the video difficulty. So to organize this work and to get partners focused on the areas that they may have been working independently on for different reasons, or may have in different ways worked on projects or policy engagement or outreach, or really the data and the science. We have now said that there are areas of focus and there are priorities that we can work on, and there are a number of activities within each of these areas. We are also creating corresponding working groups or committees to help advance some of those areas of focus. Gabe, can you hit the button?
I think Anuska,
I don't know exactly what's all on her slides.
Exactly, she's rejoined, so maybe.
Oh, hi, Anuska.
Hi, sorry, I didn't realize I'd even gone off. I was talking away to myself. Okay, so thank you, Aaron, for stepping in. Okay, so you've talked about the purpose of GPEC, is that right? So we can move on to the next slide.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we go about working together and moving forward with collective and coherent action on these core areas? So the first thing we did was to identify collective priorities under each of these four core areas. These are more midterm, short to midterm priorities to long term. Then under these priorities, we have different working groups. The idea of these working groups is to identify more short-term, very concrete actions that we can collectively as a partnership work together. Next slide. So just to give you an idea of some of the things that we are working on at the moment, and we'll be continuing to do so. Well, we have a website, which I will give you the link to now. This website aims to act as a platform where we can exchange knowledge, information, to be a resource for ecological connectivity, which will provide consistency, provide messages, provide news, updates of what's going on, as well as valuable resources such as guidelines, publications, and so on that have been developed by our partners. We will, of course, be continuing to grow the partnership over the years. And currently we are working with working groups. We've just started our first set of working groups, and we've identified some very key areas where we want to work collectively to promote joint action. One of these you heard about earlier from Andy from the CMS, that Brazil are putting in their a proposal for a fifth element for the program of work on protected areas. So as a partnership, we want to support this initiative for this additional fifth element. We also want to develop a call to action where we have, as partners, a collective voice calling for entities across different sectors to integrate and scale up ecological connectivity action. We have webinars such as this that we're working together on, and side events. And these are very important, especially based on one of the questions earlier about functional connectivity. As we said, one of the first points of that is having it recognized in policy, for example, through CMS's definition on ecological connectivity, but also sharing knowledge and sharing information and sharing experiences and practices that are going on to support countries in being able to integrate more functional connectivity into their policies and considering it at a greater landscape and seascape scale, moving away from species-specific corridors. So, as we know, ecological connectivity affects not just the terrestrial ecosystems, but marine and freshwater as well, inland waters. So we want to also, with all the great work that's going on by our partners, develop a best practice toolbox, which will make it accessible and easy for those of you, organizations, countries, or any actors on ecological connectivity to really see what's going on around the world and the best practices for integrating connectivity so that we can maintain, enhance, or restore ecological connectivity. Just moving on. Next slide, please, Gabe. So that was a very, very brief overview, even briefer because I bowed out for half of it. Apologies for that. But please, I invite you all to go to our website, gpegpartnership.com, to find out more information about the partnership, about our partners and the interesting work they're doing. And if you're interested in becoming a collaborative partner yourself, if your organizations or institutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anuska. And also if a 1-minute lapse is the only technical difficulty that we have when bringing 200 people from who knows how many, maybe 100 countries around the world into a single space, I think we are.
And it has to be an Irish person.
Yeah, then I think we're doing just fine. Just think about 5-10 years ago, what would have been possible. So thanks again. Yeah, and so I really do encourage this gpegpartnership.com website. We are actively updating, and there is more information that you can find about the partnership there. Right on. Well, we have one more quick forward-looking presentation to continue the momentum for connectivity, land restoration. And to do so, I'm going to invite Sasha Alexander, a policy officer at UNCCD, to welcome us to UNCCD COP17 in Mongolia. Sasha, please.
Thank you, Gabe. Thank you to all the speakers, the excellent presentations, a diversity of thematics there. Yeah, so nothing I can add to any of that. But what I would like to do is invite you to the UNCCD process. And if you're in the neighborhood, I would invite you to come to COP17 in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. So that's my job. Next slide, please. Yeah. So as one of the 3 Rio conventions, we are focused on sustainability from the perspective of land use and land management. We know that land degradation, desertification, drought all have connectivity issues, whether they're terrestrial, atmospheric, etc., hydrological. There are connectivity issues in basically everything that we do and move forward in terms of economic activities, in terms of our social stability, our rural stability, etc. So the convention is focused on addressing those drivers and looking for solutions. And what we see is that connectivity appears more prominently when we're talking about the landscape scale. The going beyond the field or the project scale, but looking at the landscape, looking at integrated spatial planning. So our convention is looking at these issues very much. Integrated landscape management is super important to advancing the objectives of the convention. And this COP in Mongolia, you may have noticed, is very much focused on rangelands. So rangelands as a land use category is up to 55% of the global land area. So we're talking about more than half of the world's surface area dedicated to rangelands. And there are many connectivity issues with regards to rangelands, pasture lands, grassland savannas, however you want to call it. Next slide. I'm not sure. So Mongolia has featured this as part of their legacy. But we have the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists. We have tremendous momentum. Many of the GPEC partners are involved in rangeland and restoration activities, in increasing the extent of protected areas in rangelands, as well as the incredible opportunity to harness the traditional knowledge of pastoralists around the world, so that we can really look towards improving the health and productivity of these vast landscapes. So this is going to be an important focus. The land-water nexus is also a priority for the Mongolian government, and as well as Central Asia. We know that there are rewilding activities, reintroduction of keystone species that are beginning to look to have incredible impacts in terms of the Central Asian landscape. Bringing back a lot of these essential elements that we need to keep the carbon, the water regulation, the various things that all contribute to the sustainability of our planet. So there are many entry points for connectivity within the UNCCD process. And we can only invite you to join us and to be a part of this evolving narrative that I think will become more and more important as we move forward. Thank you so much, Gabe, and to all the organizers. Really appreciate this important webinar. Oh, back to you.
Thank you, Sasha. And thank you to all the UNCCD Secretariat for the support throughout, and good luck with the upcoming COP. I think, let's see, moving on here, what we have seen from CMS at the beginning to UNCCD here at the end is really that cross-cutting importance for connectivity across different priority areas, be it migratory species, desertification and degradation, and everything in between, as our case studies have demonstrated. Really, an essential cross-cutting tool and concept to think of regardless of environmental challenge, and that's connectivity. So that is also sort of the theme of this Global Land Outlook Thematic Report, is tying together challenges that the globe is facing and providing these integrated opportunities for addressing them. So I really do encourage everyone to access the full GLO. The QR code here should bring you there. But for the time being, I really want to thank everyone, all our speakers. If we were in a room, you would hear a thunderous applause. Here online, we will just thank you for taking the time to share just tidbits, little snapshots of what you're working on. The recording for today will be shared, so if you missed something, we'll get that out to you. Also here at the bottom of the screen is my email address. I'm happy to take comments or questions via email and try to work with our partners to get any other information and follow-up out to you. And with that, I will go ahead and close and thank everyone again for joining. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye.